Hands up if you've heard the advice before for your games of D&D or other role-playing games, if you've been told to try and make your games feel cinematic. Keep your hands up if you're anything like me and really took that advice to heart. You decided to plan every part of the session so your game would look as dramatic and cool as it did in your head. And keep your hand up if you're somewhere along the stage of realizing that is just not sustainable. It's not something you can usefully do for a long-form campaign. Yep, that's me, guilty as charged. It took me a while to realize that a game master or a dungeon master is not a writer. And in fact, my big piece of advice for you for this video is I want you to be a bad writer. By that, I mean taking on board some pieces of writing advice, they are very smart people, but also going rogue, stepping outside of the received wisdom, and looking for opportunities to make our games into something that you just could not do in any other medium. At first glance, the roles of writer and game master can feel very, very similar. We're authoring an experience. We're planning very, very carefully what should happen. But the big question for us is what inspiration can we take from writers of any medium, and what makes TTRPGs unique? What is truly special and unlearnable in any other format? My name's Rich, this is Renegade Rolls, and I used to call myself the narrator, the storyteller, rather than game master, but I've since changed that. For me, game master and dungeon master is a special set of skills all of its own. The first part of this video is about what we can learn from writers. There are so many things that they've just figured out over time that we can transplant across into our games with no problems at all. Then we're going to look at the controversial bit where I'm saying, well, we should be bad writers. We're just going to throw away some of the advice and really refine what it is that makes a role-playing game unique and the really special stories that we get to tell. Some benefits of thinking like a writer. They know what it is to tell a satisfying story. The art of writing has a language to articulate different parts of a story. Then we'll look at the uniquely game master, dungeon master side of things. The kind of things which reading all the books in the world or watching all the movies will never prepare you for. For thousands of years, since the first stories like the Odyssey, writers have known what makes a good story. I've got 4 of the best bits to share with you. We have the hero's journey. We have the lesser known moral premise of a tale. We have the importance of the words therefore and but. And we also have narrative cues, which give us a clue on whether we should be having a high point, a low point, or a dramatic twist in a tale. There are a lot of stories that can fit into the hero's journey. While the names of individual steps might change depending on which version you look at, we can map so many tales onto this. But what's useful for us as game masters to realize is whether they know it or not, our players want to tell these stories for their characters. It's a very satisfying time for their character to leave home, to go out and explore, to go into the cave to find the lowest point of their life, then to win the day, come out heroically and head back home. By knowing that navigating this circle is something our players want to do, it allows us to make their dreams come true for them. If we feel the character's having just too nice a time, if everything's feeling too settled and peaceful, we know that they're probably on the first position up there. So what do we do to set them on their way? We find an inciting incident. We mess things up. We find a reason to make their life hell. If they've just defeated the big bad in a final showdown, take them home. Show them what normality, what their regular life would look like after this. Of course, these rules are meant to be broken. Having dice on the table where the outcome is uncertain can give our stories really surprising twists. The roll of the dice might decide that a player character is going to die in session 2. That does not follow our hero's journey, and it could feel jarring for the players, but I love that kind of thing. I want the story that we tell to be a reflection of the roles at the table, rather than us deciding just what should happen. This can lead to such surprising moments, and no, it shouldn't have happened this way. It was before his time. Or, oh, I expected that fight to be more difficult. Cool. I'm here to be surprised by the story we end up with, and between me and my players, that is exactly what happens. Next up, we've got the moral premise. This is the concept that in an ideal world, which sometimes our tales are, good behaviour gets rewarded while bad behaviour is punished. Now, what good and bad behaviour look like in your world is entirely up to you. But the core of this is that virtue leads to a good outcome, vice leads to a bad outcome. Following the virtue means you're in for a good time. Falling off the wagon, doing something wrong, you're going to get punished. Horror films are a perfect example of this. If a character makes a transgression in the eyes of the viewer, something as simple as not answering the phone to their mum, down they go. They're in for a bad time. For more on bringing horror structures into TTRPGs, Mothership, just there, is a masterclass on it. I do plan on making a video about Mothership one day, but in the meantime, go and watch the excellent Quinn's Quest one. A good example of the moral premise, but from an odd film, is Braveheart. Starting with the vice, we have, if we compromise for freedom, that leads to tyranny. But if we die for liberty, that leads to freedom. We can use that moral premise to decide which direction a story should take at any moment. If a character lives up to their virtue, we should try and reward them in some way. If they succumb to vice, well, trouble. This only applies if we're playing a heroic kind of game. If you're looking for some more intrigue and nuance, maybe flip the two around. Maybe show a character who's able to profit while doing bad things. If it's an NPC, fair enough, but if it's one of the player characters, that's even more interesting to me. If you're playing a deliberately evil campaign, try and reward the player characters at every opportunity for being as bad and nasty as they can. And if they have a moment of goodness, a moment of virtue, punish it. The core of narrative flow was summarized brilliantly by Trey Parker and Matt Stone of South Park fame. There was a video that went out that showed some of their advice in how to use those words, therefore and but. I've linked it down in the description, but it's all about how you can get from A to B to C in a coherent way. We go to the shops, but there's a tiger in the street. Well, that's already a compelling story. The addition of the tiger is adding a new challenge to the protagonists. If we were to say we go to the shop, but there's a tiger and a blue car goes past, that detail feels incongruous. It's just an extra detail that doesn't actually add anything to the plot. Unless the presence of that car is foreshadowing something, or there's something interesting happening really soon, you can safely remove that detail and still have a compelling story. Having said that, I'm all for world building detail. I'm all for painting the scene and making the experience feel as rich as possible. But we don't need that extra information if we're just looking to get from A to B to C. I had the pleasure of sitting down with my screenwriter friend Alex, who took me through some even more interesting concepts.
I think there's a lot of these people, when they're creating characters, is do something called a hot seat. And what you do is you sit your character down, not physically, but you ask them, and you go through, when did they grow up? You know, it's really weird. It goes like, when did they lose their virginity? You know, like, how was that? But not like how was that? But like
describing great detail.
What was the emotional sort of outcome? You know, what was sort of these big moments in their lives? Because then when you start doing this, then you start building characters that become more real.
How do you think about ending things? End of a movie, end of, or in my case, end of a campaign?
So often you have an idea of the end. So say you're writing Die Hard, right? A man turns up, terrorist. You know he has to defeat the terrorists and get his love back, or have that resolved one way or another, because that's what is being established in the first act. It's the Chekhov's gun of storylines. You know, if you set it up, and one has to be paid off by three. So that would be the sort of what I would do is have that ending, and it's really hard. You can sort of go along a certain point with your characters, and then they start making their own decisions. And it's a weird thing to say, but you start to realize they wouldn't do that. And so your job is to sort of shape where they're going to where you want it to end, without it seem contrived.
To quote the late, great Terry Pratchett, once you have a character sitting right there in your head, all you really need to do is wind them up, put them down, and simply write down what they do, say, or think. The full podcast-style chat is available on the Renegade Rolls Patreon. You can sign up for just £3 a month, or $3 something in freedom units. Or, if you want to be like the one suspiciously nice person, there is a £20 tier. I've made it very clear that you get absolutely nothing extra with that, but it is a lovely way to support me and the channel. So thank you so much to the one person who's done that already. I appreciate you so much. As for what we as Game Masters can do that writers can't, well, here is some very specific Game Master advice. What I think is unique to D&D and TTRPGs, and really sets it apart from writers of any other format, is that the stories come about partly due to the creative imagination of everyone around the table, but also randomness. It's letting the dice fall where they may. That makes the story feel personal. It makes it feel unique and special to the group that's sitting around your table. There's nothing preordained. I don't know if we're going to slay the dragon at the end of the session. There's an equal chance the bard will try and seduce it. But it's that uncertainty that's key. It means that our game tales, they might not follow graceful, smooth arcs like in the movies, but they'll be more real, more personal than anything which could be pre-scripted. Now, to be a bad writer, I don't mean be sloppy, be lazy. What I really mean is to pick and choose carefully the lessons we're going to apply. Particularly, this is true when thinking about story. Often a writer will have particular scenes that they want to include, which will help the viewers understand the characters better. When we're running games, it is very risky to try and force this kind of thing. Character development, character moments can come at the most strange times. I ran a game of index card RPG where the shopping episode was the most heartfelt thing that we had in the entire campaign. When the characters had that moment to let their hair down and to explore the town that they were in, my players found that that change of pace made it possible for them to interact with each other and take the time to know each other better. I just can't imagine that happening in an action film. I was joined by the fabulous Fraser and Ailey, two of my players from my actual play games, who have some really interesting wisdom to share.
Specifically for Call of Cthulhu, they actually mention that in like the modules. Like you've got to have this thing to stop that thing. But you know, if they don't find it, is everyone going to die? No, well, just put it somewhere else then. Make it easy. Make someone else that they talked to earlier have it and hand it into them. Yeah, it's like makes it more fun that way.
So it's almost like a Schrödinger's dungeon. It's both, hey, the clue's here and it's also here, just depending on which way you go.
Yeah. I like that.
Is this breaking any illusions that you've had as a player? Like, how does Dungeon Master do everywhere I go? I keep finding
It's just so good at finding clues.
My hope for everyone running a game is that you will hold on to your plots loosely. You might have an idea of where things could go, but when you start to overplan it to decide, exactly this will happen, you will get into trouble. Much better is to say that these plans and ideas that you've got, these are the aspirations of your NPCs. The big baddie wants to have a dramatic showdown in the volcano where they drop the amulet into the lava, sending the kingdom to the hell plane or something. That is the goal of the character, but setting up that precise moment should not be the goal of the game master. As you might find as that moment approaches, that the relationship between the player characters and this baddie, they might change and develop, and suddenly this showdown doesn't make sense anymore. It's that flexibility, that improvisational skill that the best game masters are able to do so well. And it's something that I myself have been working really hard to get better at. The world just keeps on turning, regardless of what the players do. And if they get distracted in episode 1 and spending the whole campaign just hanging out with an owlbear, baby owlbear, but maybe it grows up, full-size owlbear, yeah.
More to hug.
But sooner or later, there might just be a huge black cloud on the horizon as the forces of evil come to overwhelm their little starting village they never bothered to get out of. Because the players haven't engaged with that, but the world's kept on spinning, despite all the many hints. And by the way, do you think you should really get on with this? But the
Pigeons dropped 5 things on you.
Yeah. But the idea that you make a dynamic world, you make it keep on moving, and say you decide that every couple of sessions the big bad evil one's plan will progress, and if it's off camera, you maybe don't see that they're going to take the sword, melt it down, do something, summon the Nazgul out of wherever they were, and if the players don't engage, that is where things will go. So it's like the baddie has a plan, which if left uninterrupted, will just happen. You can also have like natural fronts as well, something like it'll be winter soon, and that kind of the change in the world happens with or without the players trying to do something about it. They could try and fight winter if they really want. That seems like a cool campaign. If you're keen to explore the more improvisational side of GMing, then these 2 videos here have got you covered. This one here is my hero's journey, getting into improv and improving and just seeing my skills rocket. And this one here is about how you can run a game of D&D or any TTRPG with basically 0 prep. I'll see you next time.